So now, yes, in the previous session, we discussed about the various pricing strategies and how, you could use, say, the cost plus pricing or the market skimming approach or the price skimming approach and the market penetration strategies to decide what should be the right price of the product. But now let's look at certain quantitative factors which will help us to better determine what the price of a product should be. So I'll walk you through what all we are going to cover today. We are going to check the demand-based approach. We are going to look at the algebraic approach to pricing, which basically involves, looking at looking at it in the form of multiple equations, how to determine the correct price of a particular product. Okay, then there is, we look at certain equations for pricing and how those are determined. We'll understand or revisit the concept of price elasticity of demand that, we have seen in the past as, in 11th standard and, all of that वो टाइम पे हमने देखा था. So we are going to revisit that. Then a couple of numerical questions. So quite a few numerical questions actually, not a couple of numerical questions. I think ये अपना last session में हो गया था, right? Penetration pricing, complementary product pricing, product line. So we'll just see if, any of this fits in. But first of all, let's start with the demand-based approach to pricing. Okay. Most firms recognize that there exists a relationship between the selling price of their product and the demand. By investigating and analyzing this relationship, it is possible, in theory, to establish an optimum price that will maximize the profits. Now, this is the basic law of demand that you studied as, young students in 11th and 12th. Now, what does the law of demand say? The law of demand says, the law of demand says that everything else remaining the same, as the price of a commodity increases, the quantity demanded decreases. Please pay attention to the words that I have used. I have not said price increases, demand decreases. I have used the word price increases, quantity demanded decreases. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that when I'm talking about the law of demand, there is something that I have written at the beginning, if you observe. What is that? I have written everything else remaining the same. That means income of the consumer is not changing. His likes and preferences are not changing. What he, you know, his likes, dislikes, fashion sense, nothing is undergoing a change. The only variables changing are price and quantity demanded. Okay, so the basic equation, if I were to, prepare a demand schedule, I would say price and then I would say quantity demanded. Now, please keep one thing in mind that there is a convention that economists use. What is that convention? If you remember, when we started discussing the concept of coordinate geometry, I told you that the dependent variable is on the y-axis, the independent variable is on the x-axis. So that is the general convention in all coordinate geometry situations. But economists का दिमाग ना थोड़ा उल्टा चलता है. If you observe here, price is the independent variable, quantity demanded is the dependent variable. Quantity changes as per price. Price does not change as per quantity. So, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. Okay. And your quantity demanded could be 800, 1000, 1200, 1400, 1600. Some basically hypothetical values that I have chosen. Okay. Now, if Price is the independent variable. Price should have been on the x-axis and demand should have been on the y-axis. But economists ka convention is thoda different. They always write down quantity on the x-axis and price, which is the independent variable. That price is written on the x-axis. Now, if I were to write down my prices, they would go something like 10, 20, 30, and so on. And my quantity would go, like an 800 and a 1000 and a 1200 and so on. So this would be my uh, plotting on the graph paper. When I plot it on the graph paper, you will realize that my demand curve, okay, is a downward sloping line. Okay, my demand curve is a downward sloping line. And how do I read the demand curve? Just see, okay, what do the points mean? When the price is 50, the quantity demanded is 800. Okay, this is the point on the demand line, demand curve. It's a straight line because, we don't have complex situations in PM, but the demand equation, the demand representation on a graph can also be in the form of a curve, hence it is called a demand curve. Okay, then for price 40, I can never draw a line, it seems. For price 40, the quantity demanded is, say, 1000. For price 30, the quantity demanded is, so I have represented this on a graph paper. So this is what it would look like. Okay, so this is my demand curve represented graphically. Now let's understand how do you interpret this? Okay, so now any equation of a straight line has a standard format which goes something like y is equal to mx plus c. Now, given that this is a straight line, its equation should be no different. Now here y is the price of the commodity, x is the quantity demanded, c is the y-intercept. Now understand what is the meaning of y-intercept. Okay, y-intercept is the point, y-intercept is the point at which the line intersects the y-axis. ठीक है, अब I'm going to थोड़ा सा make it taller. Okay, now see what I do here. I want to graphically illustrate for you what do you mean by the y-intercept. ठीक है, अब observe. If I were to extend this line, this is my line. Okay, I'm extending it a little bit. Observe this point. This is my y-intercept, the point where the line cuts the y-axis. Now, why is the y-intercept so important? I hope you will agree with me when I say that any point on the y-axis has x coordinate as 0. ठीक है, ये पॉइंट अगर y एक्सिस पे है तो उसका x कोऑर्डिनेट 0 है. The coordinate of this point would be something like 0, 60. So the y coordinate is 60, the x coordinate is 0 because this is the point where the line cuts the y axis. Okay, now what does this mean? This means that at graphically it means at price level of 60, the quantity demanded is 0. ठीक है. At price level of 60, the quantity demanded is 0. Okay. So that means till 59.9. See, before 60, there must have been a point 59.9 here somewhere. ठीक है. At this point, कुछ तो demand हुआ होगा. Something like, 1 unit or as low as possible. The moment the price touches 60, the quantity demanded becomes 0. ठीक है. Just before the price level of 60. Okay. Just before hitting the price level of 60, the demand, so say at 59.9, say at a price level of 59.99, there must have been a small, there must have been a very small demand, say 1 unit. But the moment price hits 60, there is no demand. Now, all of us also have that threshold, right? In my mind, say for example, I tell you that the PM course is for 5,000. Some people, say 50 people will enroll. When I raise the price to 10,000, 10 people will enroll. When I raise the price to 14,999, one student might find it worthwhile to pay. But the moment that price becomes, say, 15,000 rupees, no student will want to enroll. So that is my y-intercept. At y-intercept, at that particular point, the x coordinate is 0. One small jump and the x coordinate becomes 0. That is the maximum. So the maximum price I can go up to here is 59.9. That does not guarantee me the maximum profit. Okay. That only shows me how high I can go. That does not guarantee me any kind of high profit. So see, profit is basically sales minus cost. Okay. So, if I were to again give you a hypothetical example of how the change in price, how the increase in price does not necessarily lead to an increase in the overall profit, that understanding is also important for you. यहाँ पे you see the price is decreasing and the quantity demanded is increasing. ठीक है. We could have, so at price 500, the quantity demanded is 800. Okay. What if I draw another table for you where I write down, say, this is table 1. ठीक है. ऐसे ही I'll show you table 2. And by price, I mean selling price. Selling price, quantity demanded. ठीक है. So, my selling price would be something, say 20, 18, and 15. ठीक है. When the selling price is 15, the quantity demanded is 160. When the selling price is 18, price थोड़ा सा increase हो गया, quantity demanded is 135. Quantity demanded has decreased. And when the price moves up to a further 20, this becomes, say, 100 or say 95, for example. Cost per unit, variable cost per unit. How does that change? Variable cost per unit will not change depending on the level of production. This is something that will remain constant. Say my variable cost per unit is 10 rupees. 10, 10, and 10. Okay, let's first of all calculate the contribution. Total contribution, okay. Total contribution is units into selling price minus variable cost. Okay, now what if I tell you that my fixed cost is 800? What will my profit be? My profit will be, so there is no proof, or there is no guarantee that decreasing the selling price and increasing the quantity demanded is leading to any kind of profitable situation. Okay, आपका selling price आपने कम किया तो quantity demanded naturally went up, but you see the profit got wiped out completely from this case. So determining the right price is important. When you went, consider the price movement from 15 to 20. ठीक है? Consider the price movement from 15 to 20. Profit goes up by 150. And when you consider the movement from, say, 18 to 20, you see the profit has reduced actually. यहाँ से यहाँ तक profit goes up, but when the selling price increases further from 18 to 20, there is a different impact on quantity demanded, and profit does not increase, profit goes down. So increasing the selling price is a decision that has to be taken very carefully. Increasing the selling price does not mean that there will be an increase in profit, and decreasing the selling price leading to an increase in quantity demanded also is not a proof of the fact कि भाई आपका selling price कम करेंगे तो quantity demanded increase होगा, तो that will lead to an increase in profit. No, you will have to evaluate the nature of relationship between price and quantity demanded to decide what should be the correct price at which the profit will be maximum. ठीक है? And when price moves from 18 to 20, profit falls by 130. ठीक है? Profit falls by 130. So naturally there is a different change. There's a different kind of movement. There is a different kind of impact that you can observe here. So that we are going to study this relationship a little later today. But आज ही देखेंगे. ठीक है? Now we are going to look at the economic approach or the algebraic approach. जो अभी हमने देखा, what economists were saying, to that we are going to now give an algebraic twist and understand how these things also specifically work. Okay, so be with me. Algebraic approach means equations wala approach. ठीक है? So economic theory states that profit is that the monopolist maximizes profit when marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Up, let's understand the different elements of this definition. Who is a monopolist? A monopolist is a person who is like the single player in the market. ठीक है? Monopolist is a single player in the market. There is no competitor. He is the only seller. So if people want to buy something, they have to buy it from him. They cannot buy it from anyone else. So what the economic theory says that a monopolist maximizes profit when marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. In economics, you must have studied in 12th standard different types of markets: perfect competition, monopolistic competition, monopoly, oligopoly. This is the monopoly wala situation. And then later this logic gets extended elsewhere. Ab, यहाँ पे there are two terms that they have written. One is marginal cost. This is the additional cost of producing one more unit of the product. ठीक है. What is marginal cost? Additional cost of producing one more unit of the product. So if I were to take a simple example, units, variable cost per unit, ये डिलीट करते हैं. Variable cost per unit, then selling price. Okay, selling price बाद में देखते हैं. Let's look at fixed cost and let's look at total cost. Selling price का इसमें ऐसे तो कुछ यूज नहीं है. So units, variable cost per unit, fixed cost and total cost. Now I am producing say 100 units. Variable cost per unit is 10. Fixed cost is say 1000. When I am producing 200 units, variable cost per unit is 10. Fixed cost remains 1000. What is my total cost? Total cost is units into variable cost per unit plus fixed cost. Total is 3000. Now, understand how is, how is marginal cost calculated? What did I say? Cost of producing one more unit. Here, the production is going up from 100 to 200 and cost is going up from 2000 to 3000. So basically, marginal cost is increase in cost divided by increase in production. Increase in cost हो जाएगा आपका 3000 minus 2000. Denominator में आपका रहेगा 200 minus 100. You will get 10 per unit. Also, when production increases from 100 to 101, fixed cost remains the same. The only additional cost you incur for producing that one extra unit is 10 per unit. ठीक है, which is the variable cost. So आपका marginal cost is basically equal to variable cost. ठीक है, marginal cost is equal to variable cost. ठीक है, अब along with marginal cost, you need to understand one more term which is called marginal revenue. ठीक है, this is additional revenue from selling one more unit. ठीक है, this is additional revenue from selling one more unit. Now, in case of how do we determine marginal revenue? ठीक है, we'll have to compare price, we'll have to take the quantity, then we'll have to compare that with the additional, we'll have to consider the selling price per unit. फिर हम देखेंगे what do you mean by marginal revenue. ठीक है, let this column be say quantity, let this be price per unit, let this be total revenue, let this be, so पहले total revenue तक करते हैं. Let's go one step at a time. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, but I have my quantity data. Now the selling, when you are When your selling price is 70, you can sell 1 unit. When your selling price falls to 60, you can sell 2 units. When your selling price, say, falls down to 50, you can sell 3, then 40, and then 30. You know what? I should not do this. I should have the columns arranged this way. Because price comes first, quantity happens because of the price. So that's the relationship between the two. Okay. Now, if I were to calculate revenue, it would be price into quantity. Okay. That is how we would arrive at the revenue figure. Okay. How do you calculate revenue? Price into quantity. What is marginal revenue? Marginal revenue is a revenue that you get from selling one more unit. ठीक है. Marginal revenue is एक और यूनिट बेचेंगे तो कितना रेवेन्यू मिलेगा. One के पहले कुछ भी नहीं था. There was nothing before one, so zero. When 0 units were sold, revenue was zero. 1 unit is sold, revenue is 70. Marginal revenue will be 70 minus zero. यहाँ पे when 2 units are sold, revenue is 120. When 1 unit is sold, revenue is 70. Marginal revenue is revenue from making one or selling one more unit, 50. यहाँ पे देखो, marginal revenue, 3 यूनिट बेचेंगे तो 150 का रेवेन्यू, 2 यूनिट बेचेंगे तो 120 का रेवेन्यू, एडिशनल रेवेन्यू इज 30, एडिशनल रेवेन्यू इज 10, एडिशनल रेवेन्यू इज -10. ठीक है. सो दिस इज व्हाट वी मीन बाय marginal revenue. Revenue from selling one more unit of the output. ठीक है. Are you all with me in terms of what is marginal cost and what is marginal revenue, everyone?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है. अब लेट्स ट्राई टू, ये जो एक स्टेटमेंट यहाँ पे लिखा था ना, इकोनॉमिक थियोरी स्टेट्स दैट मोनोपोलिस्ट मैक्सिमाइजेस द प्रॉफिट व्हेन मार्जिनल रेवेन्यू इज इक्वल टू मार्जिनल कॉस्ट. लेट्स सी इफ वी कैन prove this in some way. So new data, comparison of marginal revenue and marginal cost. सिंपल प्राइसेस रखते हैं. प्राइस पर यूनिट, ये एक्चुअली ऐसे का ऐसा कॉपी करते हैं. Price per unit, quantity, revenue, marginal revenue. Variable cost per unit, fixed cost, total cost, marginal cost. ठीक है. इसका भी एक रिलेशनशिप we'll have to show and prove here. So let's try to do that as well. ठीक है. Say let my variable cost per unit be 30. ये अलग डेटा है. ऊपर हमारा कुछ और था, ये अलग डेटा है. 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. Say my fixed cost is 1500. Fixed cost total remains the same. How do you arrive at total cost? Total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost, right? So fixed cost plus variable cost, quantity 1, variable cost 30, fixed cost 1500, 1530, 1560, 1590, so on. Now what is marginal cost? Cost of producing one more unit. ठीक है. Even when the production was zero, fixed cost was, I can write down that also. Say selling price was 80, quantity was 0. Variable cost per unit was not incurred, but fixed cost was incurred. है ना? Fixed cost was still incurred. What is the total cost? Quantity. No production means no variable cost. Total cost. What is the marginal cost? Marginal cost is cost of producing one more unit. Basically, marginal cost is your variable cost. यहाँ पे revenue is 0. Marginal revenue. यहाँ पे 70 minus 0. One more unit. Now let's observe the relationship between these items. Okay, we have a lot of data points. Let's see if we can calculate profit per unit. Profit per unit is total revenue minus total cost. ये कैसे होगा? Total revenue minus total cost. फिक्स कॉस्ट को थोड़ा सा और कम कर देते हैं, बहुत ज्यादा हो गया है फिक्स कॉस्ट. और कम करना पड़ेगा. Okay, and you see now, depending on, see, fixed cost has an impact on profit. Fixed cost will never have any implication on the uh, contribution. So this is, when we compared the overall contribution. Sorry, this is when we were looking at the overall profit. Now, you see, you will have a multitude of data points at each step. What is important in your analysis is, when is your profit maximized? Okay, when is your profit maximized? That is the question. Your profit is maximized at what stage? Now, when you create an entire calculation like this, you will need an understanding of what is the relationship between what is the relationship between different variables. Okay, you have to you will have to dive deeper into understanding what is the relationship between different variables. Now, for a minute, I'm going to eliminate the fixed cost, because fixed cost has got no implication on the overall. Fixed cost remains the same regardless of the level of output. And we had established here that marginal cost is equal to variable cost. So this will be 0. Now, observe this. If I were to write down my contribution per unit, contribution per unit is sales minus variable cost. This is overall contribution, not contribution per unit. This is your overall contribution. Now, if you observe, initially it was 40, increased to 60, increased to 60, sorry, or remained static at 60, came down to 40, and then your overall contribution only was eliminated. Why? Because your selling price is declining. है ना? अगर आपका selling price constant होता, contribution भी constant ही होता. But here, your contribution per unit is also changing. If I were to, instead of overall contribution, मैं यहाँ पे contribution per unit भी लिखूं. When I write my contribution per unit also, you will realize that this doesn't remain constant. Why does it not remain constant? See, because this is 70 price per unit minus variable cost 30 per unit. It is falling. as my selling price is declining, naturally my variable cost has remained the same. My variable cost has remained the same. What is the direct implication? My contribution per unit falls. Okay. And when my contribution per unit falls, naturally my overall contribution will fall. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that there is a relationship that you can establish between the selling price, the variable cost, and the contribution. If the selling price declines, the contribution per unit also declines. And see somewhere here, I want you to look at these two columns right now. Marginal revenue, marginal cost. ये दो columns observe करो. Marginal revenue 70, marginal cost 30. Overall contribution is only 40. Marginal revenue 50, marginal cost 30. It is overall contribution of 60. Marginal revenue 30, marginal cost also 30. The contribution steadies itself at 60. And after this, there comes a decline. After this, from 3 units, when you go to production of 4 units, क्या होगा? आपका contribution में decline आ जाएगा. From 60, it will come down to 40. ठीक है? So, one thing that we can observe is as the quantity produced, see quantity produced, price, variable cost, इनका we have to understand the relationship. यहाँ पे price is decreasing, quantity demanded is increasing, but that does not guarantee that the overall contribution will increase. ठीक है? That does not guarantee that the overall contribution will increase. And an increase in quantity demanded is because of a decrease in selling price per unit. And when there is a decrease in selling price per unit, naturally आपका contribution भी decline करेगा. This relationship, marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, is something that we'll prove in some time. Abhi we have proved one thing. What have we proved so far? As the price decreases and quantity demanded is reduced. ठीक है? As the price decreases and quantity demanded is reduced, the contribution first increases, then becomes steady, and then declines. ठीक है? If I were to just show this on a graph, see how this would look like. I would much rather, this is not the kind of chart I want.
Well, as the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases, right?
Yeah, which is happening now.
But you have written as demanded is reduced.
Sorry. My mistake. You see here, this is our behavior of contribution. It goes up, it steadies, and then it falls down. I'm talking about behavior of total contribution, not contribution per unit, behavior of total contribution. And this is, see, agar आपका selling price constant है, cost is also constant, then contribution will also be constant. यहाँ पे overall contribution is behaving in a certain way. इसका relationship we'll try to establish with other points also. Now, before we move on to the next part, I want to, show the relationship between uh, variables, that is quantity demanded, price per unit, and marginal revenue. Okay. So I'm going to plot those points here. I want you to study the relationship between these. Price, I don't want total revenue. I am only interested in marginal revenue. ठीक है? And I'll eliminate this for now, or we can keep it also. That's also fine. What I want to do is I want to demonstrate the marginal revenue line, and is it connected with the, is there any other relationship also that we can establish here? ठीक है? अब थोड़ा सा आई जस्ट हैव टू रीशफल, अदरवाइज ना वो ग्राफ में ढंग से नहीं आएगा. प्राइस क्वांटिटी, प्राइस पर यूनिट एंड मार्जिनल रेवेन्यू. ठीक है, अब लेट्स सी इनका ग्राफिकल इक्वे, हाउ डज इट अपीयर ग्राफिकली. एक सेकंड, ये जीरो को एलिमिनेट कर देता हूं फॉर नाउ, देन यू विल बी एबल टू अप्रिशिएट द रिलेशनशिप बेटर. What is this? This is demand curve versus marginal revenue. Demand curve versus marginal revenue. अब ये क्या रिलेशनशिप है? You see, at the highest level of price, and when the least possible quantity was demanded, marginal revenue and price were the same, but price declined by 10, 10, 10, 10. ये 10 से कम हुआ, बट मार्जिनल रेवेन्यू ज्यादा रेट से कम हुआ. ठीक है, 70, 50, 30, 10, -10, 20, 20, 20, 20 से कम हुआ. सो यहां पे when price declined for at each step by 10, at each step by 10, marginal revenue declined by 20. So can you say that the rate of change, और यहाँ पे डिक्रीज हुआ है तो हम डिक्रीज का बात कर रहे हैं, अप्लाइज फॉर इंक्रीज ऑल्सो, that the rate of change of marginal revenue is twice the rate of change of price. Can we say this, that marginal revenue declines at a faster pace as compared to price? Can we say that? And we can also make another observation, that marginal revenue curve is below the total revenue curve. Okay, marginal revenue curve is below the demand curve right now. Let's not call it total revenue, वो बाद में introduce करेंगे. Is below the demand curve. ठीक है, total revenue curve तो will be an upward sloping curve. Marginal revenue curve is below the demand curve. यहाँ पे price changes by 10, marginal revenue changes by 20. So marginal revenue falls twice as fast. When price falls, marginal revenue falls twice as fast as compared to price. Now, ये जो relationship है, behavior of contribution, ये जो concept है, marginal cost, marginal revenue, and this graphical relationship, this is something, that is going to come in very handy in the numerical questions that we are going to do. तो अभी ये छोटा छोटा ingredients आप समझ लो, understand the individual ingredients, because they are going to be very helpful in developing the concepts of pricing. Okay.